come to order. This is a regular business meeting of the Riverside School District 96 Board of Education. It's Wednesday, July 19th. Margie, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Barsotti?
Present.
Mr. Hunt? Ms. Kleiber?
Here.
Mr. Marhold?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Regan?
Present.
Thanks, Margie. The first item on the agenda is public comment. I see that Ms. Doctor has signed up for public comment, and if anyone else wishes to comment, of course, you're welcome to. So if you would like to.
Hi, my name is Wendy Doctor, and I'm at 186 Akenside. I have a second grader, incoming second grade at Central, and then a 3-year-old. As you know, the Central parents of the incoming second grade have been concerned about the rising enrollment of that particular grade, and in all of our research, we actually are now becoming concerned with the entire district-wide enrollment as well. So we just are hoping, and we in our discussions with everyone, what our immediate concern is that, and it looks like the current enrollment just went down, was updated today, so it looks like it's 2 down, and we don't know what happened there, maybe 2 left, but when we first looked on Monday, it was 25, 24, and 24, and what we were told is that in the spring was that at 25, that was the number that the board would then open up a new classroom, as they did at Ames. That was kind of the new unwritten number, whereas with the policy, the number for the K through 3 recommended policy is 20. So we've already been way over that in many of the classes, but in this particular class specifically is what we're concerned with immediately. We would love to see the board recommit to that small class policy, and I know that in the past, for the last decade or so, it's been kind of a natural exception being made for that policy, which we would like to see hopefully stop and start recommitting towards that small school or small class policy. And also would like to reconsider the stopping of the shuffling around of students and families around the school borders, which seems to, for instance, last year what happened, there was 14 kids from Ames who came to Central because a 3rd classroom wasn't started there last year. So now we're at a problem with Central today, whereas had we just started the 3rd classroom last year, we wouldn't have a problem at Central. But we would like to stop the leak in the dam now, and hopefully we can address this. I personally see the enrollments rising in the next 10, 20, 30 years here in Riverside. I'm a realtor. I'm on the Economic Development Commission in the village. All I see in real life is more young families moving in with young children and older retirees, empty nesters, estate sales selling. I also see those houses being either torn down or popping the top and creating larger homes in that same space, and I do not think that we will be having a flat line anymore of, it's my personal opinion, of enrollment. I just see it, we're going to be facing this problem every year, I'm sure. And so we really, in closing, we would like to, and I will say, I love that, I was wrong, because Jeff, you just said earlier that this might not be the case, or that you're still looking at enrollment, but the current 4th grade at Central is keeping their 4 classrooms, which we really would like to have kept, because that then is abiding by our 20 classrooms. But we would like to see 2nd and even the 3rd grade classrooms at Central get another class. Now, how do we do that? In our discussions in spring with Martha and with Mr. Gatz, it was brought up, and I suggested the district offices. It seems like that is a definite possibility. Mr. Gatz, it would open up 2 classrooms at Central, which is the number we need currently. I don't want to throw you out on the streets, obviously, we need you. But, I think that would be a good way to for an immediate need to find, and then we can find rentals or even a trailer for the administration or something for the year. So that would be my suggestion of one possibility for the immediate. So hopefully you guys can we can figure this out, and not just this year, but I think we need to look long term, because I really do think this is going to be something that's going to be coming up every year.
Thanks,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Doctor. Is a pressing issue, and we are certainly working on that. Does anyone else like to comment about this or any other topic? If not, then the next item on the agenda is the changes to the agenda. Does any board member have any changes they'd like to make to the agenda? If not, the next item is the superintendent's report.
And I just have a couple quick items. I just wanted to share with everybody the active member certificate for the Illinois Association of School Boards, that we continue to be active members there. I know our new board members all attended new school board member training. I went with them back in June. It's just the membership provides kind of a nice overview of code of conduct for board members. And then the other item is just our special education, our LEA determination that we meet requirements. So the state reviews our special education programs and services to make sure that we meet the requirements under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. State informs us that we meet requirements. My understanding is that is something that was not always the case in Riverside. I think Ms. Shaw and the special education teachers and the entire department have done an excellent job in providing high quality services to our children with special needs. So I think it's important for the Board of Education and the community to note that. We received that information from the state just a little while ago. So the other thing, it's not on the agenda, I just wanted to make an introduction to Erin Roach, who's sitting over there in the third row. Erin is a superintendent practicum student at Loyola University, so somehow 1 year into the superintendency I was asked if I would supervise a superintendent to be student. So it's a nice opportunity to talk with somebody else who's also in the field, and Meryl and I have both been kind of problem solving with him and looking at his practicum internship requirements to see how he can help us with some areas of research and consideration that are in our strategic plan. So thank you, Aaron. He's a full-time principal in Chicago. He won't be here a lot. It's not a full-time internship. It's part-time and some hours that he'll be doing. He'll be joining us at some board meetings to get a sense of how our board operates, et cetera.
Okay. Thanks, Martha. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Could I ask the board secretary to please read the consent agenda?
Okay. The items on tonight's consent agenda include the minutes of the closed session on June 21st, the minutes of the regular business meeting on June 21st, the personnel report, the payables pre-list as of June 30th, the payables pre-list as of July 19th, and a review of the closed session minutes of the previous 6 months.
Thanks, Joel. At this point, is there any, does anyone would like to take any item off the consent agenda for further discussion? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second. Margie, please call the roll.
Mr. Regan,
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber,
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Marhold,
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Next item is are there any comments from the Riverside Educational Council? I don't see anyone here from that organization, so I guess not. Next item on the agenda are board member comments, committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? Mr. Hunt is not here. Sherry, do you have any reports of the education
We
committee?
didn't have a cow last month. I mean, there's ongoing ELA work for teachers who are many times voluntarily coming in to do work, so I'm really proud of them for putting in the extra work, but that's kind of what's going on in the summer besides the regular
Thanks, Sherry.
meetings.
Rich, is there any finance committee reports?
No report. I just want to welcome Mr. Holmes to his first board meeting while he's on the payroll. So this is good. You're finally getting paid for it. We look forward to working with Mr. Holmes and working with him as far as how we move forward and indoctrinating him into our board perspective.
Agreed. Welcome. So next we move on to old business. There's only one item on old business, which is the stipend list that we discussed last month. So at this point, is there a motion to approve the stipend list for 2017-2018 as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions or discussion about the stipend list, stipend schedule?
I have a couple of questions here. There's a couple of items that bumped up, and I'm sure there's a good explanation behind them. I'm just wondering if someone has that. So specifically, towards the bottom of the list, under, let's see here, the mentoring. The mentoring seemed to grow, to jump up between this year and last year.
Yeah, and I think, Meryl and I looked at that because our anticipated number of new teachers, so mentoring is based on a new teacher, gets assigned a mentor, that is really not at a larger number. What we actually think is that not everybody who did mentoring last year submitted to get paid. So it's really optional, and there's a bit of a almost fuzzy line, for lack of a better term, on when you're mentoring and when you're sort of putting in your hours as a mentor and when you're just being a good colleague. So that's our guess, is that maybe we didn't fully pay what we had especially anticipated or budgeted. Yeah.
I think the other thing, whenever we went through the timesheets, Donna supplied me with all the timesheets. We had a lot of people who mentored on their planning time, and they don't get compensated the extra amount when they're using their planning time. So rather than submitting a timesheet, they gave up their planning time. So when you see that, we don't max out the budget allocation in terms of what we pay out. So there was a lot less time, actual paid time for mentoring than there may have been if they had met after school or before school, because we did assign them matches for their grade levels and areas. So that's some of it. And I don't think, looking at the number that's in there, that will come close to hitting that with only 15, well, now 17 new hires after tonight.
We want to present you the maximum that it could
Right, the maximum that it could be.
Okay.
If that helps to clarify.
Thank you.
I know, Rich, we did have some retirees. For that.
The usual amount of retirees. I want to say yes. I don't think we ever get a large sort of group of departing teachers, nor would we really want. It's nice that it's kind of more monitored and measured.
No, extenuating circumstances with illness or anything like that.
Yeah.
I seem to recall Mr. Sellers telling us that there was somewhat fewer retirees last year than maybe he had anticipated initially. Does anyone else have any other questions about the stipend report? If not, then Margie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Marhol?
Aye.
Mr. Barsadi?
Aye.
Mr. Regan?
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thanks, Margie. Next, we come to new business, and there's only one item, which is a discussion of the 2017-2018 enrollment overview. So, Martha, would you like to walk us through that? Where we stand at the moment?
Sure. And thanks to the board, I know everyone's been looking carefully at these numbers, but I will just kind of marry the information we have about numbers along with our school board policies. And as you know, and really as Wendy pointed out too, that we have a policy that recommends a class size, and then the superintendent has the opportunity to seek board approval when we anticipate that we might exceed those numbers. So it's actually kindergarten through third grade, 20 students is the recommended number. Grades 3 through 5 is 23. And then grades 6 through 8, we list a target of 26 students per class or per section. Then we also, sort of in conjunction with that, we have a school assignment policy. And so I think that often gets referred to as this flexible boundaries policy, with this idea that new students can be transferred from one school to the next, not students that have already been enrolled or already have spent a year or more at a neighborhood school. So in terms of that school assignment policy, the policy is really designed to balance class sizes by transferring, to look just at newly enrolled students. So one of the things that we're taking a careful look at here on July 19th is to look at those number of newly enrolled students. And we do have newly enrolled students at Blythe in grades 2, 3, and 4, at Central in grades 2 and 3. And we actually have only one new student listed on the enrollment report for Hollywood. So I think one of the conversations for us to have tonight is this idea of what I might propose as a conditional transfer. And the reason I say conditional is here we are on July 19th. One of the things that I learned that August is a busy time in school districts in terms of registrations and enrollments. So we know we're looking at, for lack of a better term, kind of a moving target here, and that's complicated. We also know the policy is complicated enough in terms of, telling a young family new to Riverside District 96 that they may or may not attend the neighborhood school that's in closest proximity to their home. A couple other things we certainly know is that when we have transferred students in the past, that students seem to be really happy with with their new home school. That we have several times, and just in my 1 year here, reached out to some of those families and said, would you be willing to move back, or would you even want to move back, again with the goal of balancing class size. And I don't think I can name a case of a family that said, yeah, we only wanted to go there for 1 year, we'd rather be back at our school closest to our home. So although there are some reservations I have, and I know the board shares around transferring students, I know that all of our classes and all of our schools offer a very high quality education. That I do not think there is a bad school. I do not think that there is one school that feels better than the other. I think they are all really excellent. We have worked so hard to provide a lot of consistent professional development, training, resources, obviously are well aligned and well unified across the entire district. So I think it would be I have no reservations there. The policy also says that if a family were to be transferred or even conditionally transferred at this point in time, that they could then ask to be on a waiting list to, if a spot opened up at their school closest to their home, that they could then be kind of in order of registration, be enrolled back at that school. So my thoughts at this point would be that I carefully monitor this. That I actually think that at this point it might make most sense to communicate to all those families, but to call it a conditional transfer to kind of explain the scenario that we are looking at right now, and then to kind of move forward from there, potentially finalizing this at the August meeting. And the reason I say that, and I have given this a lot of thought, is that we know that last year we had 10 new second grade students arrive at Ames as new students. We know the year before that it was 3. So it's a very unpredictable number, but there is some anticipation that Ames is the school right now that has the quote unquote openings, right? So we have class sizes of 17, 17, and 17 in the 3 sections of second grade, with that recommended class size of 20. That's an opportunity for 9 students to go to Ames, and we would still not be beyond that recommended class size. So, I've given this a lot of thought, and I know all our board members have too. That when I think about what's best for students, we know that balancing of class size, providing obviously a high quality education for all of our students is the most important thing we do. But by creating the balance and potentially enacting these transfers, that I believe we're also doing it in the most fiscally responsible way, which I know is obviously another charge given to all of us, you as board members, and to me as the superintendent. So that is my thinking. I'm very kind of eager to hear from all of you as the full board tonight if there are other thoughts, considerations that we'd want to talk through or walk through with all of this.
I think that makes a lot of sense to actually, that is, as you said, that is our policy to transfer students in cases where the classes in their neighborhood school are full, to actually transfer them to schools that have a lower enrollment, and in that way balance out the class sizes across the district. I think that makes a lot of sense. I do recognize at the same time that it's not ideal for a family that may live close to school A to be told they have to go to school B. But I don't see any good alternatives to that, clean alternatives to that, and it is our policy. And so in that sense, it seems that we should, if we don't like our policy, we can always change it. But given that it is our policy, it seems to me we should adhere to that to the extent possible. So those are my thoughts on that.
Can we just step back 1 second and talk about space? Is there extra classroom space anywhere currently?
We could open one class section at Central. We'd have to do some moving around. We'd actually have to convert our conference room into a small group learning space.
That's that conference room on the first floor.
Like across from the principal's office. And I've talked to Mr. Gatz about that possibility. It's an idea we've kind of discussed as a what if, knowing that none of us have that crystal ball. We've talked about that over the course of the spring and the summer. And it would change how he does conferences, IEP meetings, that kind of thing. He would use the art room on days when our teacher's not there. And so again, it's not a perfect solution, but it's one that could work.
And so I know Ms. Doctor had talked about the district office.
Yeah.
Because I know 4 or 5 years ago that was classroom space.
Yeah.
I am assuming, while I agree, I think it's a great solution, I'm assuming it's not a solution for a month away.
I think
because it is offices, it's not
Right.
set up as a classroom
Right.
that would require construction. I just want to make sure we all have the same baseline here.
Yes.
So that isn't really an option for this upcoming school year.
I think it would be a very problematic option given that it's July 19th and it's something I think it will be considered. I think it will become a consideration in the master facility plan to look at, it's in the strategic plan, consider alternative space for the district office.
Moving you guys offsite,
Yeah.
or somewhere else.
Yeah.
I would agree. I would fully support that personally. Just it's space in the building that students can use, and I know they used to use it. So
Right.
Right. Can Wendy speak? She's raising her hand.
Oh, yeah, please, yeah.
About the district.
If you speak at the microphone, then they can hear you on the...
Maybe Martha, you might remember this about that question. Because I thought Mr. Getz said that the district office, his plan wasn't he had it all planned out as far as the district office wouldn't be used for classroom space. It was going to be used for support personnel and pull-out classes. So the classrooms were going to come from somewhere else. I don't know what that was.
The current plan does not use the district office. The district office has potential to be central space over time, but I think it just would have to be more planful than for August of 2017.
Yeah, it might just be something to ask Mr. Getz, because he rattled off a number of ways to do it.
You could use it in free
so I don't know, but I don't remember exactly what it was.
Right.
My other question, really, and I'm sure other people have questions too. So I agree, we have a policy, and until we decide that policy, I think we can all admit that the policy is not perfect and it's not easy. I'm not sure if there's a great alternative with the facilities we have and the the change in demographics. We're space constrained. We have 2 small schools, 2 big schools. It's very difficult to have a clear-cut policy that really works for everybody. But I think Jeff had mentioned, we have a policy. I think we need to follow the policy. So if we're at a point where we just don't think we can have any more second graders at Central and there's room somewhere else, I think we need to enact our policy, unless as a board we feel that the policy is flawed and we need a new policy. So I think that's a bigger question than just what are we going to do for the summer. But I think it's something we really need to focus on this school year. I know most of the people have been on the board with me we've all been thinking about this for 2 years, and we really wish we could have done something 2 years ago, but we kind of couldn't. So I would propose that we make this a goal of the school year to either really flesh this out and figure if this is the policy we want, or figure something out. But that doesn't solve any of the current problems.
I think I think we need to. The policy we should take into consideration the policy, but also what we're going to be doing at the facilities.
Speak up. I'm sorry.
I think we need to take into consideration what the future of our facilities are going to be in deciding the policy. Because if we're not, let's say, this hypothetically, we don't do anything to the facilities, we will want to change the policy accordingly. But if we're going to say put 4 stories on Central, we will want to change the policy accordingly. You know what I'm saying?
I do think it has to be a part of our master planning that we're about, that we've started, that we're about to embark on. It has to be a part of it.
And we know from the, even the purchase of the 92 Repton Road a year ago, and we also know that, probably moving through the village ordinance processes, et cetera, may take longer than we thought, but that was done intentionally to add space. And so you're right, there's not a sense that there's flexibility, that it's not just even at Central or at Ames. We feel pretty maxed out as a district.
I mean, if you look at the numbers across, I mean, we keep talking about Central and Ames because Ames has always been, the school has been overcrowded and Central's got the issue right now. But actually, if you look, Blythe and Hollywood are in the exact same boat. So as Wendy mentioned, it is a district-wide problem. I mean, so say 2 years ago, 10 new second graders came in August to Ames.
Yes.
What do we, like, that could happen.
Right.
And then
Right.
doing a conditional transfer is not going to matter because then people are just going to be scattered. So
Right. And we also know, just looking at geographically, so our policy also says take into account class size ratios and geography.
Right.
And so there are some locations in town, so I think of in particular if you're kind of at the further kind of northernmost corner in North Riverside, really, you can get to Ames, but the other school, Central starts to become quite far. So yeah, understanding geography, where families are, what are those extenuating circumstances in terms of transportation, location, consideration for siblings, all of that.
Has there ever been any reason why the boundaries aren't set? I mean, historically, why haven't we just sort of said, okay, every student in this geographic area goes to this school? I mean, is there a reason that we have sort of been?
I think
reason.
that was
Space.
the whole reason flexible boundaries came up in the first place. And Randy might help with this. Is that the class size was seen as more important than geography. So that's why it's a fairly well written policy in terms of this is how a transfer happens. The goal of the policy was to encourage class sizes, not necessarily neighborhood schools. And I think we still struggle with that. Because I know 10 years ago that was a more important goal to that board was class sizes.
So the boundaries are carved out.
Now, Martha,
go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Sherry.
I have one question. I know when Rick and Pat were here, Dr. Miller had helped with an algorithm to place those that are on those borderline locations to say, okay, what's the nearest best fit for them? Are you using that and accessing that?
Well, we would,
Like
so
that being used
we've
because
talked about that. We would
it's
look at that.
valuable
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
those periphery
Yes.
children.
Yeah.
So I would like to make sure that's
Yeah.
being utilized.
Yeah. Right now, we haven't even communicated with these families, but that would be our next step is to look at the
It
who.
might
and, yeah.
change how you communicate.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
when new families enroll, because I'm assuming this is going to affect new families.
Yes.
Mostly. Do we communicate clearly that you are enrolling in the district and not your home school? Because I know we kind of switched that with kindergarten 2 years ago, that you are enrolling in the district
Yeah.
and hopefully you'll get your home
Yeah.
school, but we can't guarantee it.
Right.
I wonder if
Right.
have we translated that over to new registrations as well?
Yes, I hear a lot of those conversations. We have, I've had very specific conversations with our registrar, particularly this year, obviously, and understanding that we knew kind of in the spring that the monitoring, in particular the second grade enrollment at Central was critical. So, but I don't know, what do parents hear, right? So
Right.
you moved into the village, you know that you live close to a particular
Right.
school. So is that as crystal
Yeah.
clear?
Probably.
I don't know.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Well, it also depends on their realtor, people that, it depends on what's communicated through that. So that could be a way we could utilize some communication for them.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it's difficult when you move to know that neighborhood's particular structure. And Blythe and
Yeah.
Hollywood are far different
Yeah.
scenarios for sections of schools. We have one section schools.
And I'm still learning my way around, but the curvy streets, I think, when you move in, do you know that you've moved into what would be Blythe or Ames or Central?
I mean, it's on your listing, right?
Yeah, okay.
And it usually does, I bought a house 10 years ago, so maybe it's really changed now, but it does say the school, not the district, right? Which, because I live on a border of all three of the schools, so I remember it was a conversation. But then when I enrolled here, my son was in the grade where the kindergarten was huge, and we weren't guaranteed anything, and it did come as a shock to me, because I thought, no, they said I was going to Central.
Yeah,
You know,
okay.
but
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for someone who's not here, but I sort of vaguely remember that Dr. Sharma Lewis, when she was here, was, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, was not a big fan of moving kids from one school to the next. That she was more in favor of, if you're living next to the school, okay, we'll let you stay there, even if it means that the class size kind of gets a little bit bigger than the policy would recommend as sort of the recommended numbers. And I think that was her, her view on things. I mean, again, if someone knows
That's
otherwise,
exactly right. Because I overlapped a little bit with Dr. Sharma Lewis, and that was her approach to it, is that if you move into that house and that's your home school, that's where you
and
go.
she was not concerned about this. She thought the size of the class was not as important as the ability to go to that school. And I
That's
think
right.
that may be, in part, the reason that some of these numbers have drifted at some of the schools from the optimal, because if we had been sort of consistently following the policy throughout time, we would have said, okay, now you've actually gotten a little bit high, you moved in, you have to go over here. And I don't think that necessarily happened consistently over the last 4 years. And I think that's maybe the reason some of these classes there's disparities in the numbers.
Well, last year at Ames, we had the 25 students in the first grade class, and we agreed to add the paraprofessional.
Right.
We didn't have an additional space, or maybe we, I mean,
Right.
I will say I was, brand new, in terms of understanding where could we create
gonna go?
space?
Yeah.
It's that idea of, could I move out onto the street corner tomorrow? Probably not, but even sort of having the conversation, really understanding the central facility and saying, to Mr. Gatz, like, if we had to, where, because every space has children in it during the school hours. And we know that, that's also one of the changes that's just true of school facilities, that small group learning spaces are every bit as critical as the large group learning spaces. And so making sure that the school, our schools were not built back at a time when, I know I've shared that in some of my communications, where you had a lot of the small group, whether it's reading specialists, math specialists, small special education classes, et cetera.
So one other thing I was thinking about, and I don't think it matters, but it's just, so say we do some of these transfers, and then Ames, their second grade grows by possibly 9 children, 10 children.
Right.
Ames is still quite smaller of a school than Central. And, we've got it pretty full, even with the additional classroom spaces,
Right.
using the multi-purpose room as classrooms.
Right.
It's still going to be a very, I think we need to remember that it's still going to be a very crowded school in terms of, lunch and recess and the specials and just the hallways. And so I just want to keep that in the back of our heads, that,
Yeah,
we
Martha,
definitely need more space at Ames.
yes, I mean, it's not, it looks like right now you look at it and you're like, oh, the first time ever, Ames is our solution. But, I mean, that's a lot of kids in that
we just
building.
did that split for the multipurpose room, I know. And Martha, can you tell me, because I spent far more time at Central than the other schools, but what are the classroom sizes like at Ames? Are they smaller than Central? It seems to me when I went there, they looked to be smaller, but I don't know if that's true. Or
Are you talking about the physical
actual
the
space.
physical
Square
space.
footage.
They're
Because,
slightly smaller.
20 kids in one room might be far different than a giant
Right.
room.
They're slightly smaller, but then they have a lot of the
And I know it's
smaller
not
meeting
just space. I realize this is teacher time. This is,
Linda, I wanna
a
say-
lot of things. I totally understand that as an educator. What I'm concerned about too is though, we're all moving to music, we're moving to lunch. How does this?
You have to actually look at the square footage, and I'm looking at you, Rob, and you probably have not had time to study the square footage of each classroom in our district, but they don't strike
You haven't
me as
memorized
like
it yet.
real small classes.
No, I don't think they're small. I do
appropriately
think
sized,
they are smaller than
Yeah.
Central from what I
It's just
remember a conversation.
Yeah.
But they also have a lot of those little rooms attached that, you know what I mean? So while the classroom is smaller, they actually have more separate meeting
That little meeting
spaces
space?
than. So I
But
don't
almost
know
all those
which-
little ancillary side rooms have been taken up with small group learning spaces.
Yeah.
So the reading specialist
Yeah.
uses one, the speech
Right,
pathologist
right.
uses one, the social worker uses. They're
Right.
really. It's a building that's being used to kind of its maximum
Yeah.
capacity.
I just want us to keep that in the back of
Yeah.
our mind, that it's not like there's a lot of breathing room
Yeah,
over at Ames.
yeah.
There,
Yeah.
I know it's only 9 children or 10 children possibly, but it's still.
Right. And that's true at all. And I was just looking at the list, and
So-
Blythe, we moved the early learners to Blythe. So even Blythe is each classroom
It's full
is
now.
being very effectively used. And
Hollywood is full.
Hollywood, we had art, music, and Quest. They were sharing a room, and given the smaller enrollments at work, they weren't on top of each other. They had a carefully constructed schedule, and they're going to kind of spread out because they're by the early learners moving. They have another room to move into.
Right, they've got the LADSI program, right? They've got the
Yes,
LADSI
yeah.
class.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a good point. The other thing is we have lost a lot of space over the last 3 years. We lost a space, one classroom this year from the English language learners at Central. We lost some space because the preschool has expanded fairly dramatically over the last several years. We lost a few rooms. LADSI, we have a number of kids in I think it's second or third grade in our district.
Yes,
Autism
most of
that
them are,
that
and most of them
that-
are Riverside students that are enrolled in that
we have, so
program.
we're hosting the LADSI classroom.
Yeah.
In Central itself, when I think my son was there, one of his classes was in the tower where Mr. Tufano's office is, and I think Mr. Gadsden said that's not allowed because the fire hazard.
Yeah.
So we lost
Fire
that
code.
space.
Fire code.
Yeah, they
So
used to
we
do
are
that.
sort of losing
This is like 3
space
flights
as we
to get
go.
out.
We're not losing it, we're just
Not losing-
rededicating it.
Yes, the space is not being lost. It's just,
Right.
so at what point? So say we go with the plan of just let's attempt to enact our policy and use our flexible boundaries and even out the class sizes. At what point though do we say like
We need
what
that
would you
initial
that we
section.
need the initial space like how
Right.
at what line do we draw here?
Right.
Right.
I ask Nancy, our registrar, all the time. I quizzed her again tonight. I said, tell me again. Because unfortunately, we don't, in terms of our data collection, I don't think we've carefully collected new enrollment data in terms of that June to August enrollment
time.
data. That is something that Don Tufano and Jonathan Hoffman in the tech department are working very much on. That's why you saw that newly formatted report, is that's our goal, is to capture that new number. I said, give me just an anecdotal. And she said, okay, I'll tell you, 12 to 20 new students show up in August. That's district-wide. That's not clearly, it doesn't seem to be that families always move here in kindergarten or in first or in second. Hauser took in a good number of new students. So it seems to follow an unpredictable pattern.
I meant to ask this at the beginning. I just wanted to clarify with the column, the notified not started column. I have an idea.
Yes, yeah, so those are students that were enrolled in school
Right.
last year. They're being asked to come in and complete their registration and their residency. It means that they've been contacted, but they have not finished it, or they haven't started. They haven't started it.
Haven't started any of it?
Yeah.
Your info snap.
Right.
So we sent it out to them, but they just haven't gone in and
Right.
started. So then the
Right.
question became, are you coming back? So
Right.
we started sending out new notifications, asking that question, are you returning to district?
Did you get
96?
any replies?
Oh, yes, we got replies, and then we just removed those students from the system so they don't get the notifications and they get taken out of our numbers.
Okay. So all of these students in this column are still. We think they're coming back,
They
or
haven't told
we
us that.
they
They're
haven't
not.
specifically
But
told us.
what we really did, we also were looking at, well, what sections would really be impacted if all of them showed up.
Yeah.
And there's really, I think there's really only one, and that's.
Well, that second grade
Right. That's why
central
there's
would
those
be.
5 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Exactly.
right.
It's five.
Yeah.
We have a list of students, so the game plan is just to contact them.
So we don't know. At this point, we don't know if they're coming back or not.
Yeah.
Right.
So that whole column is a question mark
Yes,
completely.
exactly.
So
But
I,
we
I
did
would
look at the
assume-
list, and we think they're families that are coming back, and they just haven't finished their
Oh,
program.
goodness, okay.
Well, we also
Right.
consider there could be some families that are on the fence, they're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be,
Some registration incentive there, maybe. If you don't register by a certain date.
Right. So are we contacting these families?
maybe, but we have that.
Yeah, and we have, they've been getting an email update, it's, you've started your registration, you haven't completed it, or you haven't started, that's gone out.
I mean, 'cause
2
looking
weeks
at that
ago,
column-
Went out
yeah.
again today.
Right,
Today.
and then we were making personal phone calls to the Central families specifically, because there's a
Right.
larger number, it's not just there, but at Central there's a noticeably large number. Because the other interesting thing is there are 9 notified not started families in 4th grade at Central, as you probably noticed. And 4th grade is where our class size policy bumps up, right? It's
Yeah.
where we say 23 is our recommended
Right.
class size. Right now those are 20, 20, 19, and 19.
But if those
What if those 9
Nine
families
don't come
really
back.
weren't coming?
Yeah.
That becomes that perfect storm of shifting it to second grade, having a room,
It's very unlikely that.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, then we have 3 fourth grade and 4 second grade. That would work great.
With the second grade, it certainly looks like if you assume all 5 of those students are coming back, that we don't know if they're coming back.
Right.
And if we assume that we transfer the 5 new students to other schools, to Ames, that would leave the second grade central numbers at, what, is that 66 total?
Yeah, I think 22.
22
Yeah.
per student, which is that right?
Well, yeah, but the caveat with the new
Mm-hmm.
is that if they're new, well, depending on the age, if they don't have
A sibling.
any other sibling,
Right.
so they have to be new.
Right. We need to know
I think
that.
most
Right.
of them would be-
We were saying, might you be a new second grader who went to Catholic school when your brother went to public school? You know, I mean, could it happen?
Right.
It could, you know, yeah.
Could.
So
Yeah.
we
Probably
have to look at,
Right.
Not
keep
as-
around
Right.
those,
Those are new.
just to make
Right.
sure.
And then
Yeah.
the policy also says you would transfer the whole family. You know,
Right.
you wouldn't transfer the house or transfer, doesn't want everywhere else to go.
Right.
But you would, if there is a second grader at Central, and they happen to also have a
Third grade,
5th
fourth
grade
grade, that's
sibling or kindergarten sibling, the recommendation would be to transfer the entire
Yeah,
family.
right.
2 questions, Martha. When we were talking about the Spanish teacher last month, you were saying that hiring of teachers, it gets harder,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
What is our, for lack of a better term, drop dead date for trying to hire a new teacher, you think?
I mean, I think August 21st,
Is it-
20th. I
is
think,
it
you know, I mean,
already
Meryl, you can
passed
speak as a principal.
I went to section of kindergarten the day before school started. We were in school.
So
But
stressful.
what you tend to find, and it was really fun, especially when AMP wasn't long. But what you tend to find often, actually closer to the start of the year, are people who have relocated and they can get their certification and licensure up to date. So you can get lucky and find somebody, you know, who's not necessarily was in that market earlier in the summer. It's a little harder. not
But
to
you
say
can
it's
get
Okay, I don't think-
unlucky as well.
You could probably do it.
you get unlucky,
It's probably
but,
not ideal.
I think that our principals are contingent. We have a pretty broad network of contacts that we would be out there like pounding pavement, not waiting for them to apply to us.
And it's a desirable place to work, you know, so that's another factor. And then apparently this is what happened when you you went to the what's now the 4 sections of 4th grade, because I was talking to Patrick Patton. He said there was a late hire for that one, and felt like it was a really, really strong teacher who's still with us. So.
And then the second was, how did the adding the parapro to the classroom with 25 work out? I mean, was it better than having just the teacher by themselves, or did they find? I mean, did it work out?
There were some
It
parents
seems
from
like it would
that
be
class here.
complicated.
But you know, I think it did work. I mean, it is something we continue to talk about. The class still feels busy. When we looked at, and I think this is a conversation we had a year ago too. I mean, we have mechanisms, particularly through our, multi-tiered system of support, our RTI, that we are regularly looking at data. That's something our teachers are very good at. That I do not feel in any of these classes that were, beyond the 20, did we have student achievement faltering because of it? Absolutely not. And the other thing that we also have that the board's really aware of is, tremendous other resources and support. So it's not because of large class size, but if a child needs reading help, they're going to get reading help. If a child needs math intervention, they're going to get that. If a child needs to see a school social worker, that opportunity is going to be there. So I think that's, one of those really wonderful things that I know this board is proud of and has worked hard to establish is, that assurance that students are going to achieve, that students are going to learn and do well in all of our schools, and even with all of our class size configurations.
Katie, you were going to say something?
Oh, if you have any questions about, afterwards to talk about what it was like to have 25 years ago. I went through that experience.
Okay. Thank you.
So we didn't set this up as an action item intentionally.
So you don't have a firm recommendation because you're not quite
Right.
sure of the numbers at this point.
Right, but I appreciate kind of the direction, from the board to say if you're comfortable with this idea of a conditional transfer to balanced class sizes, but knowing it's conditional because we know children are potentially still continuing to enroll. And I think, Linda, as you pointed out, this idea that if we transferred students to Ames only to have a lot of new Ames registrations, I think we've potentially just created unhappiness,
Yeah, you've muddled.
Yeah.
I just want to know at what number, or what point do we pull the trigger and say we're going to have another class? Because I agree. I'm a big supporter of small class sizes. I with knowing our space constraints, I know like we can't live at the recommendations that are set forth in our policy with 20 and 23. I know that we can't always live at those because of our space constraints. But I mean, I do think there's a few classes that we're getting to the point where I think they'll have to do better. So I just want to know at what point do we need board approval to? So say tomorrow 10 families show up and we say, all right, we think we need to move on. Do we need board approval? Is this something?
Well, the board, for the policy, I'm supposed to seek your approval for the classes the K3 classes that are over 20, and then the 3-5 classes that are over 23. So we already have those in this scenario.
But the point when you feel like you need to add that class
At higher, it would require board action to approve that additional position. We could wait and look at that on August 16th at our board meeting. We could call a special meeting. I communicate regularly with you each week. We can continue to look at that.
I would just personally feel comfortable if we get to the point, if you feel next week we have to do this, I would prefer calling a special meeting and getting it done as opposed to waiting until August 16th.
Which class do you have in mind, though? There are 2 classes at Central that are...
I don't have I'm just saying based on what in 3 days the enrollment looks very different and one of those classes at Central seems very,
Well, I'm wondering, as Ames starts to fill up, so we have the 17 children in a section in second grade at Ames, and we could almost fill that meeting going to the 20 with the transfers.
Right.
But what if that sort of fills based on new enrollment that we don't have? Then I think we have a different problem.
Do we have any historical information on the notified, not started? How many of those actually don't ever contact us and they don't ever show up, or they move to say California and they're
That's a new data
last year was
point.
the only year we have to go back on.
Okay.
And we had a large portion that registered by paper. So we had a lot of notified not started because we were still doing a lot of paper.
Okay.
Now they've all done. So that this is another. That's the only historical.
So it's not comparable, is what you're saying, because it was bad.
And we don't have good data on the ins and outs. That's a conversation we started really mid-year. I said, you all get the enrollment report monthly, and by mid-year it's only a little bit interesting. But I think understanding that ins and outs, we do know a good number of new children arrived at Hauser during the course of the year last year, and some left. But we didn't track that well, in my opinion. So
It's just my question is, I understand what you're saying, Linda, about let's make the decision now. But my concern is that I'm just sort of looking at these sort of question mark or that I'm hypothetically, if half of them didn't show up.
Yeah. No, and I mean after we get a better sense of those.
Right.
I don't mean if 10 people come in tomorrow, I mean once the picture gets a little bit clearer.
Yes,
if it's a little bit clearer in a week and it looks like it's heading that way, can we not wait till August 16th? That's my only.
All right. I would say all these people, then all of a sudden the people who haven't registered yet come in and say, oh yeah, we're coming. Then we know we're.
I think that's fair to say also, Linda, is that if the data's coming in and Martha feels like it's heading in that direction, we don't have to wait.
Yeah, can we call a special
4
meeting?
weeks
Would
to do
you
it.
guys be okay with that?
Yes.
Understanding the anxiety that's out there in the community about this, we want to address it fast. But I think I think if anything, this conversation, we've got an immediate need, but we all understand we have a need for space in this district. And it sort of puts a new spotlight on the work that we're doing with the space studies.
Right. And I mean, I think the thing is too, I know we're not talking facilities, but I mean, all this stuff is sort of cyclical. I mean, you sort of look at this, Riverside was a sleepy town for a while. And then more young people are starting to move in, young families are moving in with younger kids. And that's eventually going to peak, and then they're all going to go off to high school. And then it's going to just be, it's a cyclical cycle. So we don't want to we want to plan for the future, but we don't want to overbuild.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Well, that is a good point. I mean, K-5 enrollment has been flat since 2009, 2010, at about 1,000, give or take 20 every single year since then. So whether that'll go up or not in the future, I don't know. And Ms. Doctor thinks that based on her experience with very young children that it might go up, but we don't know at this point, I think, what's going to happen exactly.
We've talked about even perhaps, that was one of the conversations that I think will come up when we look at the master facility plan, and for the board to sort of kind of hear that in its entirety is updating the demographic study. We also know that's an imperfect science, but that might be something to try to wrap our heads around even more.
I think, there's a lot of opinions out there about it, but I think it's an important piece of information because, what else are we hanging our heads on at that point? Right. It is imperfect, but, but these guys, this is what they're trained to do. Within a margin of error, as a board, we have to relate to that document when we make our decisions, in my opinion.
I mean, I think there's no doubt that we're facing this. I mean, we've been facing a space issue for some sort of time now, but I think we're looking towards solving this. You don't solve these things overnight. You don't solve these things in a year. I mean, these things take planning.
Right.
And I mean, I think we have to both just sort of plan for that with the facilities and look at that, because I do think doing this.
Well, I mean, just counterfactually, if we had an extra section at Ames 2 years ago, when the class that's going to be in second grade in Ames was coming in, we didn't have to go through all this gymnastics about moving kids to Central and Light and all the other things we sort of had to do because we didn't have any space in Ames at that point. We wouldn't now have this problem in Central. And so it's sort of like a domino effect. So just having 3 or 4 more classrooms, and I'm not saying that should be the right number, but just having a handful more classes at Ames would solve a lot of this, this juggling that's been going on for a long time. And
you're saying because that's where the growth has been centered.
Well, that's where the growth has been centered, and it's also where, between the 2 big schools, Central and Ames, in some cohorts, 6 classes is enough, and sometimes you need 7. And if we have some capacity in Ames to add the 4th section at Ames rather than at Central, by adding some more classrooms in Ames, that gives us more flexibility about doing that. So we we can plan ahead, in a more rational way rather than sort of like, okay, what do we do? Where do we move the kids now? It's like but we need to have that space in order to do that kind of planning, I think.
Agreed. So if anybody's watching this meeting and you know somebody who's moving away, call us. You'll help us out a little bit. If anybody knows anything, the more information the better.
I think one family's already in this data, one is not. But like Nancy said, she had just in the past 24 hours a family with 4 children show up and a family with 3. I believe the family with 3 children is already in this data, but the other family was kind of coming to pick up paperwork and they're not in there. So that's how summer is in District 96. I'm sure in any district, but perhaps the close monitoring of the enrollments is less of a critical.
I still want to reiterate, every one of these board members is a parent currently, and some of us for many years, and we have had similar experiences. We don't log giant classes. That's not our goal. But we don't take this lightly by any means. So anybody that's watching, we struggle with this very seriously. And we have kids, we understand, and we're going to take the time to do it right.
So are there any other comments or thoughts on the board on this topic? Or Martha, do you have any further thoughts on this?
No, I really appreciate the conversation.
So it sounds like we're kind of in agreement that we're going to monitor this closely over the coming days to see if we get an influx of numbers. and then possibly implement the transfer if that looks like it's going to play out the way we think it is now, and then sort of see what else transpires, and then we'll keep the board informed, over the next week or two. So it's sort of the agreement we have right now.
But to move forward with a conditional transfer.
Move forward with conditional transfers.
Communication around that.
Maybe we'll just find a lot of kids who are moving out of town and we'll just... I know, you're shaking your head. I know that's... I'm just trying to be optimistic.
So the next item is...
Yeah. Can Wendy have a...
The next item is public comment, second public comment.
So please talk.
I would like to make sure we follow the
There's so
format a
much
little bit.
better. Just one thing that I'm just thinking about, as far as maybe just something to think about, is if, two things actually. One, someone asked about enrollment, like during the school year you guys were talking. I think Mr. Gatz actually has been tracking centrals at least. And I remember when we were talking in spring, he had mentioned that surprisingly to him, 2nd grade and 5th grade were the highest enrollments while he's been here during the school year. So it's just something to think about. And then, which I was surprised. But and then the other thing is just a thought that if for some reason space makes it impossible to create more classrooms than we need, and it seems like we're not following the policy regarding class sizes in the district. Maybe a new policy could be made as far as if we do go over the recommended, maybe that's when a parapro or, I would prefer a certified teacher be in there, but maybe that's something that we start thinking about too, as far as getting learning help, because I do see it. I saw it in my child's class as her class grew from 19 to 23, 24 during the school year. It was more difficult for individualized learning to be happening in the 1st grade, and I'm sure in the 2nd grade it'll be because there's such a variety of learners at that time. So for a teacher to be expected to teach to 25 students of all different abilities and reading and math at that time, they take out. But and I think I think the lower learners were taken out, but I don't know about the higher learners and that support they get. And so I would think that might be something to think about too. It's the learning that we're all important. I think someone said it's the learning that we're most concerned about. So whether or not there's 25 or 20 in there, we just need to make sure that there's the optimal learning going on during the school year. So that's what we're most concerned about.
Thank you, Ms. Doctor. I think we're all on the same page on that as well. Does anyone else have any comments, final comments here? If not, then the...
I have one. Are we moving forward? We are tracking data better. I just want to make sure. We keep talking about, we don't have that data. We don't have that data. Moving forward, are we going to try to? So next year, when we're having this conversation, we could actually reflect back to what this year was. And
yeah, I think this year, and working with Martha and discussing the types of reports, that would be beneficial. And mapping the monthly report, we'll be able to track that. In and out.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Like that was something we talked about months ago, unrelated. So I wanted to have a sort of a change in enrollment.
Yeah, because the number could be 20 one month to the next, but it doesn't reflect that one student is left and one is entered.
And then I think for all of us, just to get that sense that children really do move here in some ongoing way, or they absolutely don't, or that anecdotally again, this idea that 2nd grade perhaps is a time when families maybe relocate from the city. You think a lot of times families will try to get here for kindergarten start in this, but not necessarily so. That someone else had shared that 2nd grade is not an unusual number to arrive as a new student.
So we clearly have enrollment issues year after year. So it would be great if the data could inform us. So great, thank you.
Yeah, please. If you could just step to the microphone and state your name and address for the microphone.
My name is Monica Harris. I live at 220 Quincy. I have a 2nd grader also at Central. I just have 2 questions for you. So the first one was around the conditional transfer. So if at Ames we have an extra class and we're at 17 per class, if families who move into the district are all to transfer, that includes all siblings, correct? That would be in that school. So if there were 2 people within the school, is there potential that would overcrowd additional classes of 4th grade or 1st grade or kindergarten or other places? So are we possibly creating other problems for ourselves even if we move to other school districts? That's part of my question. My other point is that even during last year in first grade at Central, my daughter's class started at 19 and went up to 23. So we added 4 students over the course of the school year. So even in hearing that only 12 to 20 new students come into the whole district during the school year was not our experience that we had last year. And so I don't know if it was just our class and just our grade, but that's just not what we saw. And because second graders are still those really early learners, which is I'm sure why that policy was set at 20, having that be one of the highest numbers that we have in our entire class seems disparate. So that's one of the concerns that I have.
Those are points well taken. I think my suspicion is that the last year we had 7 sections because of we were short 1 section at Ames. We'll ordinarily have 8 sections or 9 sections. In first grade last year we had 7. Ames was totally full. It did 2 very full sections. So anyone that came into the district, they didn't go to Blythe, they came to Central. So that's why you saw an unusually large influx, because they had nowhere else to go.
There was literally
That
no
was-
space. Yeah.
So that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board? If not, then future meeting dates, we have a committee of the whole meeting is canceled on August 2nd. August 16th, we have a regular business meeting at 6:30 p.m. in the Hauser Learning Resource Center. September 6th, we have committee of the whole meeting at 7 p.m. at the Blythe Multi-Purpose Room. And then September 20th, we have a regular business meeting at 7 p.m. here in Hauser. So if there's no other business, then the meeting is adjourned.